Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I have an amazing guest lined up for you guys today, Paul C. Brunson. I'm so excited to have him on the podcast. I literally met him at Act Like a Success seminar from afar in the audience because Patrice Washington introduced me. Why? Because she actually literally met me because I'm kind of crazy. I put a picture of her up on Instagram. I was so excited to get her book. And so she remembered me, you guys, just from that. And so then I met Paul C. Brunson. I met Doreen Rainey.
Yes.
And just a little background on that before I dive into his huge introduction, because he is an amazing guy. I literally had I'm a huge Steve Harvey fan. Let me just back up a little bit. I totally love Steve Harvey. Love him, love him, love him. Watch him, read his books. I mean, I want to be on his show. Okay. So I literally was following his Act Like a Success. I signed up for it. I was all about it. And I was signed up for these free tickets to this Act Like a Success conference. And I'm like, oh my God, I won. I won the tickets. And then my skeptical brain was like, oh no, what are they selling? I was like, what are they going to try to sell me? But then I kind of thought, well, you really love Patrice Washington, you might get to meet her. And then I'm like, I might need what they're selling. I'm going to go. So I got my husband's Cubs tickets. He said he would go. The rest is history. So long story short, this is kind of part of our topic today, how to create more WIP, wealth, influence, and power. Now I'm going to talk about my guest. So Paul is the bomb. He is totally the bomb, you guys. Not only has he created classes for Oprah, okay. I mean, to me, Oprah is the supreme. I just love her. And I've watched almost every show she ever created. So he is his own version of Hitch. Okay. One of the top matchmakers of our time. He is an author, television host, and top entrepreneur with appearances on the Today Show, Nightlife, CNN, Entertainment Tonight, The Washington Post, Black Enterprise, Essence, Ebony, The Washington Post, and he was awarded the Innovator of the Year by the Jamaican Impact Organization. He resides with his beautiful wife, Jill, and his two amazing children, Kingston and Liam.
Yes.
He now focuses on teaching us the skills he has learned to become one of the biggest thought leaders of our time so we can create more wealth, influence, and power. Create your own WIP. Welcome, Paul, to the show.
I love that intro. A matter of fact, I'm going to need you to send that to me so I can use that intro. That's a great intro. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
A great guy. So anyway, I met you at the Act Like a Success conference, and you were talking a lot about, first of all, you were talking about how you got into matchmaking from being in business school. Can you start with that background? Because I found your story to be inspiring as well as fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be happy to. So I consider myself a hardcore business guy, right? So undergrad. I then from there went on and did investment banking. I then got this great job working for this billionaire, right? It was just an incredible, incredible career. But I'm also Jamaican. And if you know Jamaicans, we have at least 8 jobs, right? At least 8 jobs. And so one of the jobs I had was to run a nonprofit organization. And in that nonprofit, we served students, mostly of color, who were coming from low income households. And during this one summer event, 100 kids came through the program and not one of these 100 kids had two parents in the household, not one. And
Wow.
it completely blew me away. And what I wanted to do there, the light bulb that went off was, wow, I would like to figure out how to create more nuclear families. And my way to do that was to be Hitch, right? And to actually matchmake. And so that's what led me into matchmaking.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I will,
Wow.
yeah, and I'll tell you this, everyone said, don't do it. You're crazy. I was just graduating from business school. They're like, no, don't do it. You're great. This is crazy. But I wanted to do it. It was something that I was passionate about. And also it was something that I felt like I had a unique skill set to do. I felt like I could do something in that space that no one else had ever done. And it was for those reasons and more that I decided to become a matchmaker.
Wow. And then like I was listening to you talk about how you don't really take much note of Facebook, and you kept getting this message from Jennifer Duck. Did I get that right?
Oh yeah, you got that perfectly right. And this is what I also say too about when you're thinking about a new career or you're thinking about a pivot. Ultimately, what you want to look for are points of validation. You want to look for things that are happening to validate this new direction or this new move that you've made. And so here I was, going down the business, traditional business route this way, and then right, decide to turn and become this matchmaker. And everyone said, no, that's the wrong path to go on. But very quickly, when I say very quickly, within a few months,
Wow.
I launched a web series. And my web series, I launched it to announce that, hey, I'm a matchmaker. I'm proud of it. And no one would watch this show. Like literally, no one would watch this web series but my mother and my wife. Like nobody watched this thing. My grandmother wasn't even watching it. But it turned out that someone from the Oprah Winfrey Network was watching. They shared the video with Oprah. And within just a matter of time, they messaged me on Facebook to ask me to come out to LA. And when I went out to LA, this was in 2009, they offered me a show, and the show changed my life. And so that, though, was a major validation point to let me know, hey, Paul, you made the right decision and you're on the right path.
But you almost missed your opportunity.
Oh yeah, with Oprah. Oh yeah, your research is good. Your research is really good. Absolutely. Because when come on. If someone sends you a message on Facebook, first off, half of the messages we get are spam, right? Or someone asking us to do something that we don't want to do. And then the woman's name who messaged me was Jennifer Duck. And I thought, this is somebody just trying to play a game. And then, so this mysterious woman with this weird name contacts me and says, I want you to come to LA to meet Oprah. It's like, whatever, like whatever. That's crazy talk. So I literally got that message and I hit delete, and I deleted the message twice because I just didn't believe it.
Well, I don't know, but I think a lot of times that's just exactly how it happens. Your opportunities are not the way that they appear or the way you think they're going to appear. I've had similar things like that happen where an influencer sent me a message and it was about this big across. I could barely read it. I'm like, I think that's a real message from them, not an email marketing. What? Well, I'll just say yes. They were like, do you still want to come to my event? I said yes. Then they emailed back. Long story short, I went. The event completely changed my life because we did the whole perfect day scenario. We laid out what you want your day to look like from morning till night. How important do you think using the perfect day is for people to create success in their business and relationships?
Yeah. So this is what's interesting to me about structuring your day is that I've done a lot of research around the commonalities among the most successful people in the world. And what's fascinating to me is that there's really these three major chunks. There's this morning, there's afternoon, and there's this evening, nighttime chunk. Now, in the afternoon and the evening, there's complete disparity. There's lots of differences among what the most successful people do. Some feel like you have to be home, like myself, where I'm always at home to have a meal with my family. I think that that's important, and that's important to my mental health and therefore my business. But others will stay in the office and work until midnight, right? There's lots of different strategies in the afternoon and night. However, when it comes to the morning, it's nearly always the same. Nearly always the same. And so when you look at the quote unquote perfect day, to me, it's not necessarily the perfect day. It's really about the perfect morning. And now, what are some of the things that the most successful people do in the morning? Well, first off is that we all have to realize that our willpower is at its highest. Our mental acuity is at its highest in the morning. And then over the course of the day, it drains. And it drains based on physical fatigue, and it also drains based on all of these decisions that we make. And so you look at the most successful people, what they do in the morning is they limit the number of decisions they have to make. They run on autopilot in the morning. So what does that mean? Well, they've left their clothes out the night before, so they don't have to even think about what they're going to wear. Or they're like me. You know what I do? You can look at me. I just wear black all the time. That's it. Like everybody knows, if I'm going to an event, I'm wearing black. Maybe I'm going to put a black blazer on top of it, but that's as technical as it gets. But the reason for that is so that there's no decision. There's brain power. Doesn't have to be used for any of that. You could save it for more challenging things later in the day. The other thing is that everyone who I find to be uber successful, there's some type of moment of peace in the morning, whether it be exercise, whether it be reflection, whether it be prayer, whether it be meditation, right? There's some zone where you can reflect upon what you're about to get into, what you're about to do. The other part of that is there's always some type of, how should I say, self. There's some type of self-servicing. Now, what do I mean by self-servicing? For me, like right now, is when I wake up, I come down here and I read. I actually read for 2 hours every morning. That's me, kind of feeding myself, right? I think that for everyone, there's this whole idea of what can you do so that you can feel just better. And so that's typically done. So that could be exercise, right? That could be reading. That could be, playing chess, whatever it may be. So you typically see those elements, right? You see this element of, I'm not going to make a major decision. You see an element of, I'm going to reflect upon the day. And then you also see some element of, I'm going to do something for myself.
I know the morning, I'm always telling people to get a hold of their morning, because if they get up, they get their workout in, they get their day started, they're on top of it. You're not behind, you're ahead.
Yes.
And, if it's 5 a.m., 6 a.m., not much is going to get in your way of you and working out. You're not going to have all those distractions, and then you've got it done. So you're ahead of the 8 ball instead of behind the 8 ball, always trying to fit it in. So
Absolutely.
I'm with you on that.
Absolutely.
And I know you studied the habits. I mean, you've worked with 2 billionaires. I mean, you've worked with Oprah Winfrey and Ansar Ujel, and you studied their habits. What did you find? I watched one of your videos, 20 habits of billionaires. What are some of the top habits?
Yeah. So I found it really interesting about Enver Ujel and Oprah Winfrey, because they're 2 completely different people, right? One's a woman, one's a man. One's, in the United States, one's in Turkey. One is, they have different religions, just different family structure, different businesses, different everything. But yet their commonality is that they're billionaires, and they actually have the same habits. And that to me is fascinating. And actually right now I've gone on and I've interviewed more billionaires, and I'm actually on this road, this track to interview 100 billionaires and to be able to dissect these habits, right? These kind of soft skills that I think add up to why they're so successful. And here are the commonalities that I'm finding, and this is in no particular order, but one, this is very important, is that these folks, these men, these women who are billionaires, they invest a tremendous amount into themselves, a tremendous amount. They spend an enormous amount of their money, but I'll just say their resources on themselves. And this is fascinating to me because, I think a lot of us, if we were a billionaire, we would just stop. We would just say, I'm good. I don't need I don't need to learn anything else. I don't need to be taught anything. But yet they continue to learn. With Oprah, I saw her taking classes on social media. With Enver Yücel, I saw him taking classes to learn to speak English because he speaks Turkish. So this whole idea of continuing to invest in yourself. And my takeaway there is that the moment you stop investing in yourself is the moment you've written off all future dividends in your life. So you have to invest in yourself. Another thing that I find to be really interesting about these billionaires is that they source their information from the sources of the information themselves. And this is what I mean. A lot of us, we read the newspaper or we go online and read the news. But when we do that, or when we're watching cable news, we're typically watching the news that's already happened, right? It happened earlier in the day, or maybe it happened yesterday, but we're watching the reporting of what has happened in the past, the news of the past. But with Enver and Oprah, what I've noticed is that when I would go out to, if there was a dinner, at the table would sit influencers. Now, granted, they could be world leaders, it could be politicians, it could be leaders of businesses, leaders of movements, nonprofit organizations. But essentially, the people who are at their table, breaking bread with them, were the people who were creating the news, who were making the news. Their source of what's happening in the world was actually coming from the newsmakers themselves. And this was really interesting because there was maybe a 14-day, almost 2-week period that I was with Mr. Yücel almost every day. I never saw him pick up the newspaper, not once. Never saw him go online to look at the news, not once. And I thought to myself, how in the world does he stay abreast? Because the world events could impact your business. Yeah, how does he stay abreast of this? Well, every morning when he sat to eat breakfast, there were probably 30 people eating with him. At lunch, there was probably 35 people. At dinner, there's probably 50 to 60 people. And he would rotate from table to table. I didn't get it at the time. But what he was doing is he's sourcing his information from these newsmakers. The same thing with Oprah. I recall going to a dinner with Oprah, and literally there were maybe 70 people at the dinner. And she would move from table to table talking to everyone. And now in hindsight, I realized, wow, that's where she's sourcing a lot of her information. So not to say that, billionaires don't read the newspaper, but just that they're able to source their information directly from people. And I think that what, we could take away from this, those of us who are not, who are not billionaires that are watching, your show, is that it's important for us to break bread with people. A matter of fact, actually, look at this. One of my favorite books, Keith Ferrazzi, Never Eat Alone. This is the concept that I'm talking about. This whole book is about connecting with people and being able to understand. So connecting with different people, because different people have a different set of opinions, of perspective, of information, and then allow all of that to flow into you. That's really what this is about. And that's what Oprah and Enver and so many of these other billionaires do. So there's lots of these habits that I've observed, and I've tried to emulate them in my life.
And you hit on two major ones. Investing in yourself, that is the most important investment you're going to make. And it's one that I have never had anybody come to me and say, Linda, I so regret investing in myself. Never, never, ever. And it always pays you huge dividends. And just thinking back to when I did the perfect day scenario, one of the things that was just bizarre, because he made us dream huge. Like you had to do it until you were so outside of the box that he called me up front. And I was so embarrassed because on there I wrote, I wanted to eat breakfast with celebrities, but I had no idea. Why am I writing that? You know, and that's crazy. But what it really meant is I want to work with powerful game changers. I want to get this message out, you know. So long story short, I don't know. I wrote on my vision board because I created one. One of the things that went on the board, I want to be on the Steve Harvey show. Well, I wasn't specific enough. I got on the show, but it was like in the audience. Put me on clips, all these shows I never attended. Like, my husband and I were all over. People were like, "Were you at the show today?" And so I had to be more specific to the universe. What specifically I wanted was to be a guest on the show. So literally in this quest, I'm getting to my main point. I found out something. I found out that all the people that surround Steve Harvey are freaking amazing. Amazing. Like he surrounds himself with the best people. And I think like what you were talking about with the people that sat around his table that he was eating with, the influencers, you know, it's really true that when you want to make an impact and you want to go somewhere in life, you got to surround yourself with the right people. And that was the biggest thing I found because, you know, there's Patrice Washington, there's Doreen Rainey, there's Christine St. Vie, Paul C. Brunson, Tim Story. I've had all of you guys on the podcast, and I am telling you that I learned so much from just talking to you, having you on, that it just really convinced me about the whole surrounding yourself with people that build you up, lift you up. People that are big thinkers they're not out gossiping and trying to pull each other down.
Right. No, that's true. That's true. And, you know, and I'll just add real quick onto that is that if anyone, you know, watching or listening to your show, if they can't surround themselves with, you know, Christine or Doreen or Patrice, right, or Steve, what they can do is they can take advantage of the books that they write. They can take advantage of, you know, their social footprint, right, their Instagram, their Twitter, and follow. You know, I think that's what's so amazing about the day and age that we live in is that, you know, you can surround yourself with uplifting content. It doesn't mean it will be live content to you, but you could surround yourself with that. And that's something that many people couldn't do 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And so that is incredible about the time that we live.
It's totally incredible. And I think, you know, that brings me to my next topic, which I think is important in the business realm and just being able to create more influence and power in your life. How do we connect with influencers? How do we, you know, if you're trying to get ahead, isn't that somewhat important to your path?
Sure, sure. Well, I think the first part that I love to kind of unpack is, well, what really is an influencer? Because this is a term that's kind of thrown out and used, you know, time and time again. And to me, you know, I think that there's various stages. The highest level of an influencer for me is a thought leader, right? And then underneath there, you have an influencer. But then underneath an influencer, you have a micro influencer who is just like an influencer, but yet they just have a smaller audience, right? And then under that, you have a subject matter expert. So what's really the difference? To me, a subject matter expert, so actually, let me back up. They're lay people. Lay people don't have a particular expertise or they don't have authority with an audience. Then there are subject matter experts. Subject matter experts are people who have a specific expertise. They're experts at a particular skill, task, etc. But they may not have an audience. No one may know that they are experts aside from their colleagues or their boss. Then you move it up. Then you have the next rung. Those are influencers. Influencers, in my mind, are people who may not have any subject matter expertise, but what they do have is they have an audience that they have authority over. They can influence their audience. They can impact the behavior or the consumption of their audience, right? An influencer, if you're following an influencer and they're influential to you and they say, hey, I recommend that you buy this book, then you probably go out and buy this book. You know, if they're looking at you and say, hey, you should have a blue background, paint a blue background, then, hey, you're going to paint a blue background, right? You're influential. Now, then there are thought leaders. So what in the world is a thought leader? In my opinion, a thought leader is someone who has both authority and expertise. And what's unique about a thought leader is that their audience is made up of influencers. Influencers follow thought leaders. And I think it's very important to break this out, because when you begin to break it out, you understand, wow, there's almost a food chain, right? And if someone is looking to connect with influencers, maybe what you want to do early on is connect with subject matter experts, right? Because maybe what you're looking for is better understanding on how to network, right? So you go to a subject matter expert on how to network. Then you move up the food chain. And how you move up the food chain is you understand what is the goal of each person on the food chain. So an influencer, what does an influencer want to do? An influencer simply wants to be more influential. That's exactly what they want to do. They leverage their platform, whether it's their following on Facebook, their following on Instagram, their following of readers, whatever it may be. And what they want more than anything is they want to sustain that level of authority they have and possibly even grow that. So anything that you can do to contribute towards that, to add value to them, and adding value just simply means that you're helping someone get to their goal. So if an influencer wants to be of higher influence, that's you helping them to become more influential, right? And then you move to a thought leader. What does a thought leader want? Thought leaders typically want more than just influence. Thought leaders want their ideas to creep into the world, right? They want their ideas to impact the world. They want to create change. They want to change people. They want to impact people's lives.
Yeah, they want to make a difference.
They want to make a difference, absolutely. And so if you want to then connect with a thought leader, then you have to figure out how what you can give to them is going to help them to get closer to helping make a difference. And that's ultimately, I think, the difference between the various, people, influencers, subject matter experts, lay people, and thought leaders, and how you can begin to build with them.
And I find it very interesting. And I know when we were at the Act Like Success conference, you talked a lot about when you do meet the key person, the influencer, you should go give, not go get.
Yes.
How important is that to connecting with them?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, it is fascinating. We all haven't bought into this idea of it's not about the go ask, right? It's about the go give. Ultimately, the whole a relationship, whether it be a platonic, a business, or a romantic relationship, all relationships are based on trust, right? We act when we trust, right? No one is going to get engaged with you or marry you unless they trust you. No one is going to do a business deal with you unless they trust you. No one's going to hire you, right? Unless there's a level of trust. So what you want to do early on is your objective with anyone should be, how can I build trust with that person? How can I figure out how I can get that person to trust me more? Well, how you do that is you figure out how you can support, how you can trust, how you can add. No one is going to trust you if you start taking. No, they're going to trust you if you can give, and you can give, and you can give. And that person sees that not only are you giving to them, but you're also not taking. The relationship is that, wow, you may give a lot and they may take a little bit, but the net sum is that they have given to you. They have helped you. That's a powerful relationship. When you hear about married couples, right? Talk about, successful couples, like couples, loving couples that have been together for a long time, and you have them describe their relationship. Rarely will anyone say it's a 50-50, right? Or they'll say it's a 1 + 1 = 2. They'll say, no, it's a 1 + 1, but it equals 5. They'll say, no, it's not 50-50. I give 70% and she gives 70%, right? It's this whole notion of you give more. The more that you adore something, that you love something, that you adore something, right? The more you want to pour into it, especially if it's impacting you. And so ultimately, it's not about the go ask. We're living in a society where it's increasingly more important to give, and to give.
And I find that to be so true. I know, like in my own tribe, the Sisterhood of Sweat, the more value I add and the more I give to the community and to the people that I have in my studio, the more they just want to give back to you. Like they want to do everything for you. And it's, it's this giving value, just like you're saying, how are you adding value to the influencer? Where are you, it's service really. And it's work too. I mean, it's work. You got to work at it, right?
You got to work. You got to
work it. Well, I think also a key element of all these things we are talking about today is communication. And how important is it to be an effective listener, to make connections and influence others' impressions of you?
All right, it's everything. It's everything. When we are building a relationship, the science of building a relationship is it begins with you have to establish a rapport, which a rapport is just a level of understanding. But if I am to understand you, I have to first listen to you, right? I can't just assume. And I think that's the issue that a lot of us have, especially in the political environment here in the United States, where there's no listening going on. It's just simply assumptions and then talking at. But the key to building rapport, that awareness, is you first have to step back, close the mouth, open the ears, and you have to listen. Now, listening, by the way, is different from hearing. Hearing is simply noise, words coming in, hitting your eardrum. That's hearing. But listening is that noise coming in, and then there's some type of action based on those sounds. I am thinking about it. I am disagreeing with it. I am agreeing with it, whatever it may be. I am analytically chopping up what those sounds. That's listening. And so the very first thing that we have to do, whether it be in business, platonic, romantic, social media strategy, building rapport, whatever it may be, it's always listening. And I will even say, the more you listen, the more effective you'll be. I've got a book right over there by Susan Cain called
Run, go get it.
It's called, actually, you want me to get it? Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me say it. Hold on.
I love it that he's such a book person. I want you to tell the story after that, how you became a reader.
Okay, we'll do. So this is Susan Cain's Quiet, which by the way, if you are an introvert, you have to read the book. It's a mandatory read. But if you're not an introvert and you have introverts in your life, I think it's important. Or if you just simply want to be a more effective communicator, it's a great read. Essentially, what she's talking about here is that there's power in listening. A matter of fact, most of our leaders are introverted, and there's a suggestion there that they're great leaders. They're great listeners. Most, when I say a leader, I'm talking about world leaders. I'm talking about business executives, leaders of massive movements, right? Most have been introverted. And the key, what she's arguing here is that the big reason is because they're listeners. They listen. And so listening is everything. It's everything. And if you're a parent, you know this, right? Listening is everything.
Yes. And we also communicate with our body language. You can speak without saying a word with body language, which I found to be so fascinating. And you talked a lot about positioning yourself at the table in a room, in a business meeting. And I found it fascinating how sitting at a different place at the table, the perception of you is different. Can you go over that?
Absolutely. So you're making me pull out all my books here, right? This is great. So let me tell you, do you know what book that comes from? It comes from right here. Alan and Barbara Pease. This is the book that it comes from. The definitive book to body language. I've read all of the body language books. I've gone to, body language seminars and workshops. This book is incredible. One is the visuals are just are awesome in this book. But ultimately, it breaks down a lot of these behaviors that you just talked about, like the positioning at a table. And this is so fascinating. And it's funny because after I read it, I went into my son's room and I positioned his stuffed animals around a table and taught him. And now he knows exactly where the power position is.
That's that's great.
Oh yeah. And so also here's the quick one for your audience, but please everybody read this book. There's the most powerful position at any seat at a table is the position where you are facing the entryway of the room. So if there is a door, so for example, let's say actually there's a door this right over here. So if I turn my body this way and I'm looking out here, then I am at the most powerful seat. Now, why is that? The reason why is because the weakest seat at the table is actually the seat that has your back facing the window or the door. Now, why is that? There's science behind it. When you sit at the entry point, there's unknown. Who could be walking in? Who could be walking in with what? What could they be doing? What could they be bringing? Your adrenaline actually goes up. Your body, you physically, even though you may not realize it, you're physically a little bit more stressed. You're a little bit more tense when your back is facing the unknown, right? This is part of the fear, flight, right, freeze response. And so that means that the more powerful position is the position that could see everything. And you could see everything if you're at that, you're facing the door. And so it's fascinating because if you are at a business meeting and you want to get the upper hand, you now know what seat to sit in. If you are negotiating and you want to get the upper hand, you now know what seat to sit in. If you are on a date and maybe you want to get the upper hand, or maybe you know that the person that's going to be on the date is going to be nervous, right? And you don't want her or him to be nervous. Well, don't put them in the seat where their back is facing the door, right? Give them the other seat. And so this is such a powerful rule. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's a mind blow. And I've been using it ever since for years and it works. It definitely works.
I love that. And I love how you have really worked on self-development through learning, through progressing through books. And I know that wasn't always the case. How did you get started into reading? And you have not always been a reader, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I wasn't, I didn't read my first book until I was 18 years old. And then I read my first book. It was in 3 days. It changed my life. But I didn't become this kind of voracious reader until maybe about 2 years ago, where what I committed to do is one thing is I realized is all of my mentors who were crushing it, in life and who I just had the highest respect for, they read. That was it, plain and simple. Like it wasn't rocket science. It was, they read. And then when I thought about it, I thought, oh my God, you have all of these authors, some of them spend years culminating and taking all of their best ideas that they themselves have researched and spent, time on, and they push it into 300 pages or 400 pages, and then they print it. And I thought, my God, what I need to be doing here is I need to be devouring this stuff. And so I then restructured my entire life around books, where I wake up, I spend 2 hours reading Monday through Saturday. And so now in that period, I can get maybe 3 books, anywhere from 2 to 4 books I can read now within a week and truly comprehend and understand them. And it's been a game changer, complete game changer. I mean, look, in this conversation, I'm pulling out books and resources. I mean, you're asking me questions. I'm not saying, oh, this is what I think. This is where, I feel comfortable sitting in front of the chair. It's no, this is what Alan and Barbara Peace, world renowned, right? They were actually, they were investigators, they spent their entire career. I'm talking about 60 years between them doing this, researching this. I'm saying this is what they say, the world's experts, right? And so I think that's the power of reading.
Well, and it's like getting a mentor, which we could all use just at your fingertips. I mean, in the book, right? You're
Yes.
reading everything. Like you said, it's a resource. And you're also in a podcast, you're getting the experts' opinions and, just filling yourself up with self-development type tools. Don't billionaires do that too? Don't they like develop everything?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was the first rule that we were talking about, was
Yeah.
this whole notion of investing in yourself.
Yeah.
That's the key. I mean, you see it with the most successful people, period. Athletes, you look at the time, I'll never forget, there was someone who once told me about, he went to, he was picked up to basically be like the assistant's coaches, the assistant to the assistant coach for the Lakers. And he was actually assigned to Kobe Bryant. So Kobe Bryant, he said, hey, Kobe, what time are you going to come to the gym to practice the next morning? And he said, okay. So Kobe said, so the team is going to start practicing at 8. Kobe said, all right, I'll be there at 6, right? At 6 a.m. So the guy was like, well, why? And he said, because I want to get there before the team to practice. So this guy wanted to really impress Kobe. So what he did is he said, okay, Kobe said he's going to be there at 6. Let me get there at like 5:30, 5:15, just to get there early. So he shows up at 5:15. The light is on in the gym. Kobe Bryant's in the gym. Kobe got there he'd already worked up a sweat. He got there at 4:30 in the morning. So Kobe did this pre-workout, then did he did a pre-workout, then a pre-workout, then he worked out with the team. And the guy was like, man, why are you doing all, like, you're the greatest player in the world right now. Why are you doing this? And Kobe was like, that's why I'm the greatest player in the world, because I'm doing this, And so the whole idea here is, whatever it is that you want to be great at, you have to put in the work. And part of the work is getting this theory into your mind.
What would you say to somebody out there that has fear surrounding this? Because I don't know why, but it seems that people, either they don't know their worth, they have this fear of being selfish or whatever around investing in themselves. And especially, I hate to say it, women, because we're the caretakers. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say I have a book for that.
Love it.
I'm trying to see where you know what? Is it okay. It's somewhere around here, but let me tell you the book. The book is Carol Dweck's Mindset. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't. I'm excited because I have a lot of women that need to read this, including myself. I'll read it.
This is the book. I'm saying this is the game changer. A matter of fact, I would say that before you read any of these books that I'm suggesting today, you read Carol Dweck's Mindset, because what it's about is positioning yourself in the right mindset. If you don't have the right ideas in your mind, you can't execute anything. Just like you'll live in fear. You'll live in not knowing your self-worth. You'll always be taken advantage of. You'll live unhappily. You have to reshape your mind first. And the book does it's a global, international bestseller on how to on the two different mindsets, because there's two different mindsets. There's this growth mindset, and then there's this limited mindset. And then it says, okay, well, if you're a limited mindset, here's how you get into the growth mindset, right? If you're a growth mindset, here's how you accelerate that. And so ultimately, you want to be in that growth mindset. One quick tip that I'll give everyone, although I plead with everyone to read the book, is that, we've been talking about this, but a lot of our belief comes from our perception. And our perception is shaped by who we surround ourselves with, and so if you're surrounding yourself with people that have limited perception, that limited growth mindset, then ultimately you're going to adopt some of those ideas, and you're going to limit what you can do. But if you're around people who have a growth mindset, and by the way, not unhealthy, like ego, they're big narcissists. I'm talking about people who just passionately believe, they look at things optimistically. Think about if all you could do was intake content from inspirational or aspirational people. Think about that. If you saw nothing that was limited in scope, I guarantee you, if that was all you saw, your life would change. And so what we have to do is we have to realize, okay, we get a lot of negative content from people that could, quite frankly, be family members. They could be, they could be, it could be television. It could be, oh, I'm watching this show for entertainment, but it's actually negative. It could be, you go onto YouTube and you fall into that YouTube hole, and you start looking at, kind of trash content. Whatever it may be, you want to do everything you can to obstruct that, right? To guard against that and just get the good stuff in. And if you get the good stuff in, your life will be good.
You are what you fill your mind with. I really believe that, And so I think, like you said, reading this book would be the first step, because I know for some people, they truly are in that place of fear surrounding the whole success, investing in themselves, because it's going to be creating change in their life. So I think reading these books is the first step to opening up your mind and yourself to change.
Right. Well, actually, what's interesting? I think the first step they've already taken, and that is the first step is they're listening to you. They're watching you, right? Okay. So that, and I mean, you're positive, look at your smile, right? You are really, you are a very vibrant, positive person. And so anyone who's already watching your content or listening to your content, they've taken the first step. Then the next step is to actually start executing. And that is where the reading comes in.
Yeah, and you took some major steps yourself with being like, first your major one was jumping into matchmaking from being like this, into business school to matchmaking. People are probably like, what are you doing? And then you transitioned again. How was this one of the most important career decisions of your life to do this? And how did you set yourself up to be able to transition?
Great one. I'm going to drop a book on you, right? I'm going to drop a book on you. So this is another book. Let me see. Where is it? I don't know where it is. So the book.
You're dropping books. Tim Story was dropping bombs.
There you go, man. I'm telling you, we all got something. The book is called Pivot. It's the best book that I've ever read on pivoting in your career. And by the way, it has it's called a decision wheel, which is incredible, because oftentimes we're caught between, should I take that job or not? should I do this project or not? And the decision wheel is the best tool that I've ever seen to help guide in how do we know what decision to make? How do we know what opportunity to take? So definitely read that book, Pivot. But for me, here's how I look at my kind of career is I started off, cemented in entrepreneurship as a little boy. I mean, I was such a geek, in school. I was super nerd. My hobby was writing business plans when I was in middle school. My hobby
Oh my
was writing
gosh. Okay.
business plans.
That's
So,
awesome.
so you could tell, like, I was a wild guy from a standpoint of, just I was infatuated with business. And so entrepreneurship has always been my thing. I think it's in my DNA, especially as a second generation Jamaican. I think it's there. So I started my path on that. Then I launched a new company in matchmaking. But even though it's in an industry of love, it's still running a business. And I grew that business and then sold that business. And now I'm back in the entrepreneurship lane. So I don't feel like I've pivoted all over the place. I feel like I'm just back home now, and so what I would recommend, though, based on, my experience, is that I believe that it's important to follow through to a point of termination with certain things. And this is what I mean, is that we're living in a society where people start projects all the time and then stop them immediately without following through to see, did it work or not work? And the issue with that is twofold. One is that if you don't follow through to the end, you don't get the lesson. The lesson that was coming to you, right? The major lesson, you're not going to get that until you follow through to a terminal point, right? So that's one problem. The second problem is that if you don't follow through to the end, you look scattered. And not only do you look scattered, but you are scattered. And that's the problem with our society, is that everyone's hopping on to everybody else's train. Oh, I see, oh, wow, look at this. Linda's got this podcast going on. Let me do the same thing. Let me do exactly. She's posting up Instagram photos of her working out. Let me do the same thing. We live in that society, opposed to, let me figure out my own thing and let me continue to a point of termination. My career, that's what I've done. Every project I've jumped into, I rode that horse until it couldn't ride anymore.
Stay in your lane, right? Just like a horse puts these blinders on to everything else, like that's just not, so you're not distracted and by this glitzy glamour, this sparkly, like you keep your eye in your lane and focus on what's ahead of you, in front of you.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating about what you just said is that popular thought is the opposite. Popular thought is you want to remove the blinders so you can keep this peripheral vision, so you can see everything that's happening. But that's not how, I don't think that's how, I just don't think that's how success, and when I say success is, I'm talking about framing it as impact. If you want to make your biggest impact in this world, which I genuinely think most of us do, then you have to be focused. You can't be a jack of all trades. It's just impossible. But when you are focused, you'll see the sequence. You mentioned Steve Harvey. I think you could look at his career and say the same thing. If 5, 6 years, I interviewed Steve Harvey in 2015. And he told me something that I'll never forget. He told me about how I think it was just 5 years prior, he had $1,000 in his bank account. $1,000 in his bank account. Now, if his first move was, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my own my own radio show. But then on top of that, I'm going to write a book immediately. And then on top of that, I'm going to pitch the TV networks for my own talk show. And then on top of it, I'm going to tell everybody I need to host, Miss America. And then on top of that, I'm going to, if he said he was going to do all of those things at once, or he tried it and then it didn't work, then he never would have done all of those things. So how did he do all of those things? He focused on one, and he actually reached critical success at each one of those. Whether it be the radio show that really led to the first book, that really led to the second book, that led to then the movie projects, then led to the television projects, right? It's all a sequence. And so I think it's very important that we, that we look at that we look at life. It's truly sequential. I think that's success.
And I truly believe that, because it's even like that with working out. I might have somebody that is afraid to jump on a box. So we start on a small box, or they're just afraid to jump. And we just keep working until eventually they're like nailing the big box, and they're unafraid to leap, which I think it's really a lot to do with confidence. And then the more experience you gain, the more confidence you have, and the more ready you are for the bigger steps. And, I'm pretty sure, like, if Steve Harvey would have started out at Miss America and having his thing that went, kind of went a little south, he wouldn't have known what to do, right? But he turned it around, no problem.
Right.
And so I think, just like you said, having those building blocks each step of the way to take you forward. And this has just been so great today. I just want to acknowledge you so much for being sincere and genuine and positive, and just sharing all of your knowledge with us. And I just want to ask you, what are 3 simple truths you can leave with us today? Funny or serious?
Okay, simple truths about me, or anything.
It can be anything. It's wide open.
All right. Okay. So I love this. So first, I will say that I believe if you want to become great at social media strategy, you have to be a hip hop fan. I think that hip hop artists are the ultimate in content strategy. So it sounds obscure, but it's just something that I think is very important for everybody to realize. Hip hop is all about social media. So that's one. Secondly, is that we talk a lot about your mind today, but quite honestly, this thing, your body, is much more important, the health of your body. And so, I've made a drastic change in my diet, maybe a little over a year ago. And it's something that has helped me tremendously. And I strongly encourage that whoever is watching, whoever's listening, I just challenge you to just get a little bit better with your diet, because too many of us die way too early. So that's 2. And then the third is read.
I love it. I love it so much. Well, I mean, I hate for this conversation to end, but I know you have another interview. And I just really want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your gifts. And I want to thank everyone out there for listening. Please show Paul some love on the Facebook page, and also review in iTunes, and check out all his stuff. Where can they find you on social media?
I'm super easy. I'm at Paul C. Brunson. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't thank you for this opportunity. I mean, it's really cool when, you get a chance, whenever you're invited to share what you know to someone else's quote unquote family, to their community, is really special. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Paul. This concludes today's episode of the Sisterhood of Sweat.